In Flight of the Golden Geese, the book I wrote with my good friend David L'Esperance, a Canadian tax lawyer, we describe the requirements for a smart region. That is, any nation state or a state, an area, a town, suburb that is optimized to succeed in the globalized and networked world of the 21st century. The smart region is right-sized and is particularly attractive to both major corporations and high net worth individuals. Globalization has changed the nature of trade, and so today's transnational company has decentralized and distributed itself around the globe, becoming a virtual enterprise, project based and networked around global information systems. Consequently, companies have access to a billion new unskilled and semi skilled workers, and so they will choose to subcontract the requisite labour rather than employing it in house. Furthermore, the age of man-powered mass production is over. Despite all the denials coming out of the OECD, labour has become a commodity and so must compete on price. Hence, companies in the US and other developed countries are rushing to offshore production jobs. As a result, the impending curse of mass unemployment, amplified by artificial intelligence, will affect every unprepared nation state. Success in the 21st century requires specialized and focused production, facilitated by talent workers, an oversized, semi-skilled and unskilled workforce, and a bloated public sector can only lead to economic failure. In 2010 USA, there were nearly twice as many workers in government, that's 20.2 million, than in all of manufacturing, only 12.3 million. 50 years earlier, back in 1960, there were 15 million in manufacturing and only 8.7 million paid by government. The sheer volume, the sheer numbers of preferred voters from the low-skilled and public sector drive the political imperative in democratic countries, all insisting on fair taxation. In other words, excessive taxation on the wealthy. The unsentimental words of the 19th century philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche come to mind. Many too many are born. The state was devised by the superfluous ones, for the superfluous ones. The blatant behavior of tax authorities to treat the minority of hard-working wealth creators as taxation in waiting is a sure and certain sign of a country on the slide. Greed over an excessive tax take blinds their political masters to the long-term consequences of their actions. Today in the UK, over 4 in 10 adults pay no income tax. The top 10% of income taxpayers pay 60% of all income tax. In the US, the disparity is greater, where the top 1% pay 40% of the taxes. The wealthy targets of taxation will no longer remain passive, and their country will reach a tipping point. Granted, a few sanctimonious multi-billionaires like Bill Gates offer to pay more taxes, but there aren't enough of them to make a difference. Increasingly, the shrinking middle classes will be left to face the inevitable tax hikes. In order to be attractive to wealth creators, a smart region will implement policies, particularly tax policies, that expand its critical mass of scientific, technological, and commercial expertise, underpinning it with an effective education system and a highly selective immigration policy. Together, these policies regenerate and or develop a top quality human resource. But most importantly, the tax policies must be attractive and be fair to all, including the wealthy. The problem is that the commonly accepted definition of fair among populist politicians is usually totally unfair to the rich. Even the thought of being fair to the rich is often met with derision. Don't tax you, don't tax me, tax that fellow behind the tree. In the US, the radical left of the Democratic Party are demanding higher taxes on the rich. In 2018, the European Union published a document entitled A Fair Share, insisting on fair and effective taxation, without explaining what they mean by fair or effective. The prevalent political rhetoric moralizes about taxation. How easily they forget Judge Learned Hand's famous words. Over and over again, courts have said that there is nothing sinister in so arranging one's affairs as to keep taxes as low as possible. Everybody does so, rich or poor, and all do right, for nobody owes any public duty to pay more than the law demands. Taxes are enforced exactions, not voluntary contributions. To demand more in the name of morals is mere cant. Of course, taxes are what we pay for a civilized society. That famous quote by US Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. is inscribed above the entrance to the headquarters of the Internal Revenue Service. And what is more, the power of taxing people and their property is essential to the very existence of government. Although my old colleague at the London School of Economics, Ken Minogue, would probably have phrased this differently. The purpose of government is to raise taxes to pay for government. The questions still remain. Who pays? How much? And in what way? A smart region will be right-sized with the taxpayers outnumbering the tax takers. In that way, individual taxes will stay low. But naturally, there has to be some taxation. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Way back in 17th century France, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, the Minister of Finance to Louis XIV, was clear about taxation. The art of taxation consists in so plucking the goose as to obtain the largest possible amount of feathers with the smallest possible amount of hissing. If the hissing reaches a cacophony, then, as we predict in Flight of the Golden Geese, the globally mobile group of disillusioned wealthy taxpayers will fly away. Each year, thousands of super-rich US citizens are giving up their citizenship because of taxation. However, should they feel that the taxes are a price worth paying in return for the benefits they accrue from the state, then naturally they will stay. All is well, and the economy enters a virtuous circle. But if they resent paying, then they will opt out, and a vicious circle beckons. As Thomas Jefferson explained, merchants have no country. The mere spot where they stand on does not constitute so strong an attachment as that from which they draw their gain. In the age of internet, everyone can become a merchant. So how does the state ensure a strong attachment? By developing a taxation model that is appropriate to all, and not just to its vocal and envious majority. To answer the question of an appropriate level of taxation, what better place to start than with Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations? In Book 5, Chapter 2, paragraphs 25 to 28, Smith outlines his 4 maxims for fair taxation. These can be summarized under the headings equanimity, certainty, convenience, and economy. Now, personally, I would add 2 more, simplicity and necessity. Equanimity. Every citizen, every company in the jurisdiction should contribute, but in proportion to their respective abilities to pay. Those in similar positions should pay similar amounts. Certainty. There should be no arbitrary taxation, and the mode of the tax demand and the timing of collection should be predictable. Convenience. Tax should be easy to understand, clear in application, easy to calculate, and payment easy to collect at a time appropriate to the payer. Economy. The cost of collection should be as low as possible, utilizing the fewest officers and inspections, and the scale of taxation should not distort the economy or discourage enterprise and effort. It shouldn't drive away high net worth individuals. Rather, it should attract them in. Simplicity. Part of the problem with taxation is the cost of compliance. By making the tax rules as simple as possible, this waste of time and money can be reduced, all promoting a virtuous circle. Nowadays, businesses see the taxes coming out of Washington and Westminster and Brussels as denial of service attacks, limiting their ability to operate efficiently. Necessity. Tax will go to pay only the government expenditure that is absolutely necessary. Enlightened governments will avoid anything that doesn't concern them. A shrinking government means shrinking deficits. Charity begins at home. Vainglorious politicians must not be allowed to preen and posture on the world stage, involving the state in vastly expensive foreign, often military misadventures. And they must be prevented from doling out largesse in order to gain popularity among the majority of preferred voters. Sadly, few modern nation states conform to these simple rules, and everywhere self-important governments are squandering scarce resources and placing their tax base at risk. Innovative firms and entrepreneurial individuals will cluster in smart regions, the very concentration acting as a magnet for established innovators and a spur for new enterprise. Spectacular growth comes from these self-perpetuating hotspots that thrive on their own energy. This energy drives a rapid, almost uncontrolled diffusion of technological techniques and knowledge. The hotspot itself fuels the engine of endogenous growth by delivering innovation, but only within a network of trust relationships, where only invited travel is allowed to join in an institutional environment that both mobilizes the intellectually gifted and promotes and finances entrepreneurial activity by delivering the right incentives. The golden geese, their wealth and companies are indifferent to, and they are unhindered by national boundaries and barriers. They identify only with regions that serve their particular interests, and then only temporarily. They will walk away from a region just as easily as they entered it. The smart region uses its tax policies to make itself commercially and socially attractive to the migrating golden geese, who are transnational, and they will relocate physically, fiscally, and electronically to where the profit is greatest and the regulation and taxation is least.